Jeremy Hunt stops off in a Paris florist after Chinese wife gaffe. Jeremy Hunt stopped off in a Parisian florist today to find a gift for his Chinese wife Lucia after accidentally referring to her as Japanese while in China. The foreign secretary quipped about choosing some flowers to bring back to Mrs. H a day after his toe-curling gaffe in Beijing. Mr. Hunt has not been home since the embarrassing episode, and is due in Vienna tomorrow as he launches into the jet-setting lifestyle of his new post. Last night he blamed the toe-curling gaffe on having just had a conversation with his Chinese hosts in Japanese. He immediately corrected his terrible error as he attempted to talk up his family's links with China at the start of the crucial meeting yesterday morning. And he tweeted afterwards, "Rule number 1 as a new foreign sec, when reflecting in English with the Chinese on a conversation you had with them in Japanese about your Chinese wife, don't get any of those mixed up." Apologies to the long-suffering Mrs. H. Mr. Hunt has been married to Lucia since 2009 and the couple have 3 children. Mrs. Hunt was born in Xi'an, the capital of China's Shaanxi province. China and Japan have been traditional rivals for centuries. Although relations have improved somewhat recently, they remain touchy due to issues such as Japan's bloody occupation of parts of China in the 1930s and 40s. Greeting his counterpart Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, Mr. Hunt said, "My wife is Japanese, my wife is Chinese. That's a terrible mistake to make. My wife is Chinese and my children are half Chinese. They have Chinese grandparents in Xi'an, and strong family connections in China. In fact, we came to China on holiday in April," he babbled. Mr. Hunt is one of the biggest cheerleaders for China in the government and is patron of the Conservative Party's Friends of the Chinese group. In the past he has been dismissive of those who mix up the two countries, saying, "Japan and China are as different as Italy and Germany." The couple met in 2008 at the University of Warwick at an event linked to Mr. Hunt's hot courses business. He told The Times in 2013 he asked for her email address and allowed work and pleasure to mix for a moment. They married a year later in Xi'an in a traditional Chinese ceremony. She was working for the university helping to recruit Chinese students to come to the UK. Mr. Hunt took over from the gaffe-prone Mr. Johnson, who once referred to Africans as flag-waving pickaninnies with watermelon smiles in a newspaper column, after his dramatic resignation over Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit blueprint. Mr. Hunt was in China in a bid to strengthen trade ties with Beijing ahead of Britain's exit from the European Union next year. Other topics on the table are expected to be the importance of multilateralism and free trade and ways the UK and China can work together on global challenges such as climate change, development, security and non-proliferation, and enforcing UN sanctions on North Korea, his office said ahead of the trip. At a press conference later, Mr. Hunt said, "We discussed the offer made by Foreign Minister Wang to open discussion of a possible free trade deal done between Britain and China, post-Brexit. We welcomed this and said that we will explore it." He added, "We also raised consular cases, including that of the Simpson children." Foreign Minister Wang said he would look into that case while also still respecting the independence of China's judicial system. They have been the bitterest and bloodiest of enemies for centuries. But most of the continuing hostility between China and Japan dates to more recent times. Between 1937 and 1945, the Japanese committed many war crimes after invading a large swathe of China. Perhaps the most notorious was the rape of Nanking, when during a 6-week period from mid-December 1937, the Imperial Japanese Army butchered more than 200,000 inhabitants of the city, then China's capital, and carried out widespread rape and looting. Tokyo still refuses to accept full responsibility for the massacre, claiming the death toll was hugely exaggerated. To this day, some older Chinese citizens boycott Japanese goods in protest. The two nations also remain locked in dispute over the ownership of a group of uninhabited islands in the South China Sea off Taiwan. Since 1972, Japan has controlled what it calls the Senkaku Islands, but China, which refers to them as the Diaoyu Islands, disputes sovereignty. The two countries resumed high-level economic dialogue only in April, following an 8-year standoff. Tensions remain high. Last week Japan's defense ministry scrambled fighter jets to intercept a Chinese electronic surveillance aircraft over the Sea of Japan.